In this video, we're going to get an overview of our final player device, which is going to be the Scales and Chords module. So just come up to Players, grab these Scales and Chords, and I'm going to go ahead and insert it here into our Thor polysynth. Now what you're looking at here is the default preset of the Scales and Chords module. And I want to tell you about this love-hate relationship I've quickly developed for this. Now, the first thing I want to say is that this player device is way too much fun. And if you're asking what it does, let me tell you a quick little story. So for the last 25 years or so, I've been a classically trained musician. I've learned how to read notes and learn music theory and do all of this stuff. And you know, a lot of time and practice goes into that. But what's crazy is that it's all been reduced into this mathematical algorithm called scales and chords in the reason interface. And virtually anything that you want to do can be reduced down to one finger on the keyboard. But I'm a progressive kind of person, so it's very easy for me to adapt to these newer technologies. But I'm not too much of a curmudgeon when it comes to trying out new tools and toys, especially those that replace years of hard work and study and practice. But the snobby musician in me wants so bad to hate this thing. And the creative person in me just loves this thing to death. And I really don't think that I'm ever going to get rid of it. So with that, what is Scales and Chords? It's not a brand new and unique concept in the music world. It's basically an input transformer that does some math behind the scenes and can create music that actually makes sense just with the touch of a finger. So it can basically alter notes that you play to fit within a certain scale key, or it can create diatonic chords and alterations of those chords just with a single key press. So really, gone are the days of having to think through inversions, notes, intervals, scale modes, and all of that kind of stuff. With just a few simple controls, you'll be making some pretty impressive music in no time. Now, the one thing that does make this unique is its responsiveness. That's the one thing that I've really kind of enjoyed about this player device in particular, is that it's very transparent. It doesn't really take any time to think about what it needs to do. So it does have a very natural and instantaneous feel. So all that aside, let's start taking this apart visually. Now with the default preset loaded here, the Scales and Chords device is already set up in Chords Mode, and there's two different modes. There's Chords Mode and Scales Mode. All of this green outlined section here represents all of the controls that control our chords. And then everything in the blue here controls our scale. Now you'll notice that there's not an on and off switch for the scales function, and that's because the scales function actually kind of drives the chords function when it's enabled. So first and foremost, before we start using scales and chords, we have to first determine which key we're going to be playing in. So by clicking on the menu, you can select the root note within your key. And then to the right where you have your scale, you're basically going to select the mode or the tone of that key. So if you want a major key, minor key, and then we have our Lydian, Mixolydian, Dorian, Phrygian, all of our modal keys, and even a few special keys. You also note that you can create your own custom scales by selecting custom, and then selecting the notes that would typically be within that scale. In the center section here, we have a display which shows us when we're pressing a key down, but this also kind of correlates with the filter notes button. And the filter notes button just prevents us from hitting any keys that typically wouldn't be within the scale. With filter notes turned off, it just automatically will move notes to the proper key. And you'll see that a little more in the next video. The chords section you can enable with this switch, and in the chords section, you can select how many notes are in your chord, the inversion of your chord, or basically the arrangement of notes within that chord. We can open up the chords so that we have almost like one note per octave. We can add notes to the upper octaves, lower octaves. We can add chord extensions with the color button. And we can also alter chords in real time by toggling this momentary button. And when I say momentary, it's only active as long as it's pressed down. So this is going to be one of those controls that's going to be useful to assign to your MIDI controller. And again, we'll see a little bit more of that in the next video. So that'll kind of give you an overview of all of the different controls, where they are. And in the next video, we're going to start diving in and really seeing what this device can do. It's a pretty crazy tool. We'll see you in the next video.